Hello everybody, my name's Tony Collier and I'm a police officer from Staffordshire Police. This is my colleague Rob Goodwin.
Hello.
And on a date which I'm sure you're aware of by now, the 29th of April 2017, we were involved in a post-incident procedure following a pursuit which resulted in a collision, a four-vehicle collision, and some quite serious injuries to several members of the public. With regard to post-incident procedures, I think it's fair to say that on no given day ever did a police officer ever say or think, right, today's the day, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to cause a death or a serious injury to a member of the public so that we can go through post-incident procedures and see what all the fuss is about. I think you'd all agree that's absolute nonsense. That doesn't happen. Something you may not have considered though is that the opposite is also true. By that I mean, you can't turn up on any given day and think to yourself, no, not today, I am not going to get involved in anything which leads to post-incident procedures. I'm going to hide in the shadows, swim in the backwater and just stay out of trouble. Because as you will know, that's not an option anymore. There's no hiding by anybody, and if your colleagues need you, or a member of the public needs you, or both, you respond and you go and you assist in whatever way you can. And as you will see from some body-worn footage that we were able to capture from that day, things change like that in a heartbeat. Very quickly, you'll have no control over them whatsoever. We both sincerely hope that you never ever go through post-incident procedures because something's gone wrong if you do. But of course you can't rule it out and it may happen to you. One of the messages from this presentation is around body-worn cameras and the importance of them. And we were very fortunate that on the day we were all wearing them. There were 5 officers involved in total, Rob, myself and 3 others, and we all captured body-worn camera footage, which effectively kept us out of prison really, but that's by the by at this stage. So, what about that date? Well, in Staffordshire we were working what's called a supernoon. Noon shifts are normally 3 till midnight. This particular day was a Saturday, and as a result we revert from a 3 till midnight to doing a 4 PM till 3 AM. 11 hours right through all the busy nighttime life and all the problems that come with the pubs, the clubs and the kick out at the end of the evening. We've got a new name for it, but it's not one that I can share with you on this platform. It's probably a more efficient name because it's only got 4 letters in it, but I'll leave that to your imagination. So we turn up at work a little before 4 o'clock. We book out body-worn cameras that I've mentioned. We get batteries for our radios, have a bit of a chat, and we go into a briefing. And in previous presentations I've referred to the briefing as being unusual, and I've changed that recently because I now describe it as unique. There were no prisoner handovers to be dealt with, no missing persons to be looking for, there were no scenes to cover, nobody sitting down in the cells doing Pol 1 duty and looking after prisoners, no one at the hospital. In fact, there was nothing at all to give out on the briefing to us to concentrate on except the intelligence slides, of which there were about 8. We watched those and we were free to go and police the streets, and that may be part of the problem. We were free to go and do our thing. So we left the briefing, we went back downstairs in the police station, we had a brew, we had the opportunity to read our emails, and we pretty much from that point drifted away from the police station to sort out the streets of Stoke-on-Trent where we work. If I said to you that on paper we were a shift of 14 constables, you may not be surprised to find that we often paraded 10 or 9, even 8. On this particular day I think there were 7 of us, and on a couple of occasions I can remember, especially in the night shifts, we paraded 6. Now the numbers are important because if any of you are aspiring post-incident managers, federation representatives, occupational health managers, the first question you're going to ask when anything goes post-incident is, where are the staff and what are they doing right now? because what you'll want to do is get them away from the scene, from the glare of the public and the press, the victims and the offenders, get them back to the police station, get them showered, change of clothes maybe if they've been kneeling in body fluids, or even fluids out of a vehicle, or whatever else it is they encounter. Get them something to eat and a drink. More importantly, get the wraparound care in place to support them through the post-incident procedure. And that includes federation advice, occupational health advice, and of course ultimately legal advice. So there we were, the 7 of us, 3 double crew cars, me on my own, and away we went to do what we do best. We were a decent shift, we'd been working together for quite some time. The person with the least amount of service had got 10 years behind them. So we all kind of knew what we were doing. If we didn't know, we knew somebody that would be able to advise, and we got all bases covered really. But to be perfectly honest, nothing prepared us for what happened on that day. So to that end, I'm going to hand over to Rob to speak for 2 reasons really. One is, we've broken up the presentation so that we both get a chance to speak. It's easy for us and it's much easier for you. And the second reason is, he started it and it's all his fault.
Yeah.
Sorry mate.
Cheers. Thank you. For anybody who's ever visited Stoke-on-Trent, firstly I'll apologise for it. It's made up of several towns, and at the time we were a response unit based at Burslem. And Burslem then covered another town, Tunstall, not a million miles away. That day I was the passenger in the vehicle, for no other reason than my oppo was quicker at getting keys, and we set off, and as Tony said, there was nothing for us to pick up or do. So we went out, went to the next town, and again, very, very strange, no one about, no one drawing attention to themselves, no jobs to be dealt with. And it was such a strange day that I decided to have a go at doing some traffic. That was the last time I did it. As we come back towards Burslem, we come behind, in traffic, a black Honda Civic. And we all have them feelings in his gut. Something's not right. I got one of them. Because as it went down in traffic, it had only got one light working. The highlight brake, side 2 weren't working. So something triggered, and I was going to speak to the driver. And as we weave through the traffic and it goes around various parked objects, things like that, you can see down the side it's got a lot of RTC damage on it. So it's sort of building up, there's something not right with this car. So as it comes into Burslem, it's got a junction, traffic lights on red, lights change green, and he turns left. And at that point I thought, he's going to the police station and he's going to say, "Officer, someone has crashed into my car." He didn't do that. If he did, you won't be watching this video now. I'd be on an early turn dealing with handovers. He continued. So we put the stop in. Nothing unusual. And he pulls over. And he stops. And I get out to speak to him. I approach the driver's side. You know, "Hi mate, you alright?" He doesn't speak. He just leans away from me, almost into the passenger seat of the vehicle. Bit odd. And he says to me, "You don't know my dad." That was probably the only thing he got right that day, so I don't know his dad. And I thought, what? Is he drunk? What's he on about? So I lean in for a bit of a sniff, see if anything, nothing at all, and he's not making any sense to me. So I thought, I need him out of the car. Get him out of the car, we can, done. So I invite him, come and see, your brake lights aren't working, come and see. And again, I get the same sort of ramblings of, "You don't know my dad," and things like that. But there's no way, he wasn't going out, he wouldn't engage with us at all. So I thought, I'll stop it now, I'll grab his keys, he's not going anywhere, we're all good. As I reached in to grab the keys, he develops a really heavy right foot and took off, with me still attached. Now, I was dragged. I'm going to say it, you're thinking dragged, hundreds of yards, meters, whatever you want to use. it wasn't the case. I probably took a dozen steps, stumbled over into the road, brushed myself off and look up as the car's disappearing. And at that point it was a little bit odd to wander back to my vehicle and my driver, Nick, and she's looking at me, I'm looking at her, like, has that just happened? There's something in her, and I've got to shout up, I've got a vehicle making off. He's just dragged me up the road. I think that's the only time I've ever said to my police career, I don't want to be saying this ever again. I'll stand you back to town and it will continue.
So, what is it that we don't know about this driver? Well, we don't know who his dad is, because he's already told Rob. We don't know who his dad is. We didn't know that he'd missed a probation appointment. We didn't know that he was wanted on a recall to prison. And we didn't know that he got some shotgun cartridges inside the vehicle with him. Now, we were perfectly safe because he'd got nothing to discharge the cartridges in. He hadn't got a weapon of any type. But the point is, we don't know why he didn't stop. Maybe he would never have stopped even if all of those three things weren't in place. But something at that time made him decide to drive away from the police. And when we said at the start, things change in a heartbeat, that was one of those moments where they absolutely did. And this is when the pursuit started. We also mentioned that we'd fortunately got some body-worn camera footage which demonstrates the way that we drove and the things that we did and how the pursuit developed, and then you don't actually see the collision, but you will see the aftermath of the collision. But this is more of an awareness and a presentation around post-incident procedures than it is around road traffic collisions, so we don't dwell on that. But nonetheless, we are able to show you the footage from the pursuit. Okay, Rob's going to talk to you now about being at the scene.
Hopefully you just watched the footage. We described it as utter carnage. There's no other way of explaining it. I've never been to a bomb blast, never seen it, but I think that's pretty much what it would look like. I don't know if you made out on the screen, it wasn't a misty day, that was dust and debris from the impact of vehicles and walls falling out of the sky still. Not talking big lumps of car, just very small parts. One thing that affected me was the smell. Very strange, smell of burning oil. Very, very strange. I'm not going to say I sniff burning oil, that's a bit weird, but I try and avoid. If I go to an RTC now, it just sort of sends me back there for a little bit of a wobbly moment. As you've just seen on that video, I run through it, and Tony, I'm not saying he walks through it casually, but he's much calmer than me, and he turns the sirens off on a police car. We've done this presentation now numerous times, and every time I knock a normal count, but I've lost count now. On that time, on that day, I never heard them sirens. It's just something to bear in mind when people say you sort of close in and concentrate on what's going on. And we really did that day. Quite a distressing scene. Dan?
So, I've already mentioned at the beginning about numbers on shift, and there were 14 of us on paper, and we paraded 7 on that day. So when I talked to you about getting everybody back to the police station, away from the scene and all the mess and the carnage and the press and the public, with 7 on duty and 5 at the scene, there is no relief. No one's coming immediately to take you out of those circumstances. Nobody's coming to relieve you and put the hand on your shoulder and say you've done as much as you can, you're now required to go back to the post-incident suite. So where were we left? We were left at the scene, dealing with the casualties, the vehicles, the smells, the sights, the experience, the people wandering through, and you may have seen it on the footage with a camera walking through there with his mobile phone recording everything that's going on. People lying on the floor, almost virtually naked, urinating blood, all the things that we probably didn't want to show you, but we can talk about because we had to live through that. There was nobody coming to take us away. But of course, on that particular day, as luck would have it and sod's law, Our two sergeants that ran the shift weren't at work that day. One was away doing something slightly different on a course, I think, and the other was drawn into custody because custody sergeants were running short that day. And they'd both been replaced by one of the neighbourhood sergeants, Sergeant Breen, bless him. So Sergeant Breen turns up at the scene, puts on his flat hat, has a look around, and says, "Oh Christ, it was all going so well." Which of course it was, because we got things in place. We got the advanced drivers with the suitable vehicles. We talked about how to bring the pursuit to a suitable resolution. We were talking about Stinger and the tactical phase ahead of us in Leek, because the A53 is an arterial route from the Potteries into a neighbouring moorland town. We talked about all sorts of things and things to be put into place to make this pursuit end as safely as possible. And of course, as you've seen, that just didn't happen. So nonetheless, Sergeant Breen turns out and he explains that we're all going post-incident. Now, one of the reasons we wrote this presentation was because 2 weeks prior to that collision, Rob had been to a presentation around post-incident awareness, and he had a rough idea of what to expect and how it would pan out the rest of that day. So sort of the phrases around first accounts, phrases like wraparound care and phase 1, 2, 3 and 4 meant something to Rob, but they meant absolutely nothing to me. Now, I joined the police in 1996, and the only post-incident procedures awareness I've ever had was when I first started, and an old boy said, "Listen lad, if you join the firearms team and you shoot anyone, you'll get suspended, sent home, you'll sit wondering which court you're going to, magistrates, probably Crown, possibly. You'll have to go to coroner's court and you'll wonder whether you're going to lose your job, and more importantly, you might go to prison." So I'd like to meet him again and shake him by the throat, because that advice was golden. But that was it. That was my experience of post-incident procedures. And we had a very, very different journey that day through the procedure. So Sergeant Breen gets out to us and he puts us all in a group at the side of the road and said something very strange for me. "Okay, if you've switched your body-worn cameras off, switch them back on. If they're not switched on, switch them on now. And if they're already running, leave them on. You're not to talk to each other about what's just happened." Really? We're the police. All we ever do to debrief is talk about what's just happened. But no, they were the instructions. We're going post-incident. Body-worn cameras must be running or kept running, and you're not to talk to each other about what's just gone on. Okay? I'm okay at following the last order, so we did. We got, eventually, after about an hour and 36 minutes, something like that, we got some relief to take over at the scene. All the people had been cut out of the vehicles, ferried away in the numerous ambulances. The fire and rescue service had had their debrief at the side of the road, and we were put onto a police personnel carrier to be driven back to our home station at Burslem in Stoke-on-Trent. And the one thing that I remember from that journey, which I deeply regret really, was listening to one of our colleagues, one of the 5, telling jokes. Now, we all deal with things in different ways. Telling jokes isn't my thing, particularly in those circumstances. No one else was really saying anything at all. And at one point I thought I really should stop that person telling these jokes. They weren't inappropriate jokes, but they were inappropriate at that time. And of course I'm very conscious that I'm now recording myself listening to these jokes and doing absolutely nothing about it. But 2020 hindsight's something we've all got, I guess. And eventually we arrive back at Burslem Police Station to be greeted by, well, I'll let Rob describe it for you.
I certainly said when we started, we were low on numbers that day. I can remember getting back to Burslem, and I think they must have called three shifts in on rest days or something. It seemed there was just so many people there, and as we do with the police, aren't we? We want to know things. First question, what's happened? I can't tell you. And that's how it went. People asking loads of questions. Do you want a brew? Yeah, I'd love one, but I don't know what the name is at the moment. And it was decided that we were going to go into our Chief Inspector's office. Well, that on its own, you're normally only up there for tea and medals. Well, there's no tea and there's no medals, is there? So it's a bit strange. But when you get up there and you met with 2 chief inspectors, a little bit nerve-wracking, and our occupational health, which some of you might find a bit odd. What are they doing there? What's going to do with them? Quite important. Go on to that later. The chap we had was our chief inspector at the time, was a guy named Pete Owen, and he read to us verbatim a non-conferring notice, and it was pretty much what Sergeant Breen had given us. As you know, they're talking, and he just read it out stage by stage, really calm, and a little bit odd though, because again, we want to talk, but we can't. What was also quite strange, we were being videoed. Everything we said or did was recorded. There was a lot of welfare mindedness. One of the questions we were asked was, do you want to call home? And I'll hand back to Tony, because he did this, and he did quite well.
So, okay, the non-conferring notice is read out verbatim, like Rob explained, by the post-incident manager, Pete Owen, followed by, right guys, you're still not to speak to each other about what's happened. That's part of the non-conferring notice, but you can't tell anybody else either. It's going to be a long night, and you're going to be late. Which led me to think all sorts of strange things, because we weren't due to finish till 3 o'clock in the morning anyway. It's now early to mid-evening. Just how long is this process going to take? This process that I knew nothing about. And in the interim period, while I've been thinking about things that had happened, not talking to anybody about it, but thinking about what had happened, you start to think about, I've recorded myself driving, I've recorded myself speaking on the radio, I've recorded all my actions at the incident. Where might I end up? Am I in trouble? It certainly feels like I'm in trouble. We've just been met by 2 chief inspectors on a Saturday afternoon. Something clearly isn't right. But nonetheless, Pete Owen said, you might want to ring home to tell whoever's at home, your loved ones, whoever it might be, that you're going to be late. When you do that though, please tell them that you can't tell them what's happened, you can't tell them what you've done, you can't tell them what you haven't done. Ask them if they've seen anything on social media to ignore it and not comment on it. Ask them if they haven't seen anything on social media not to go searching for it. Try not to look in the press, the papers or online to find out what's happened, and tell them not to worry.
Brilliant.
Yeah, of course, that's the kind of conversation you have every day, isn't it? Loads of things you can't do, loads of things that are dead serious, but don't worry. So I make the call, ring my wife who's a DS, and as a result she's got an inquiry mind, or so she tells me, which really means that she's nosy. And I say, just telling you, just called to say I'm going to be late. Well, how late? You don't finish till 3 anyway. Well, just late. Why? What's happened? I can't tell you. Oh, what have you done? I can't tell you. Well, what's gone on? I can't tell you. Well, what haven't you done? I can't tell you that either. Well, what can you tell me? I can't tell you anything apart from I'm going to be late. Why? I don't know. Why? What's happening now? I don't know. Why can't you tell me? Because I've been told not to. And this is how the conversation went on. That was a very stressful conversation with somebody that I trust implicitly. Somebody that ordinarily trusts me implicitly, and we tell each other everything. And I'm now telling her not to worry about something that I can't tell her about. A very strange conversation indeed. Nonetheless, the conversation happened, and at the end of it she said, okay, I'll see you when I see you. I don't remember telling her that we were going post-incident, because I don't really think at that point that phrase had even sunk in. I don't recall thinking about being part of a post-incident procedure. Obviously now I know all about it, but then, no, didn't know much at all. So that conversation had to take place before we set off from our home station to where we're actually stood right now, police headquarters here at Stafford.
It was decided we couldn't stay at Burslem. It just couldn't facilitate it. And at our headquarters we have a suite. It's not dispatched as a conference room basically, but you've got access to everything there that we needed, be it toilets, shower facilities, kitchen, things like that. And it was big enough to accommodate us. When this happened, Staffordshire Police were boxing and we were fighting the NYPD, and as a result a guy who's retired now, our Fed rep, he collected minibuses and coaches. So he brought his own minibus as exec number, and he conveyed us to headquarters. It's probably 25 minutes, half an hour journey, something that I've done quite often. But as we got on, it's very difficult to imagine that we're going somewhere that I know, but you've got this feeling inside of, what have I done? Why am I being taken? What have I done? How much trouble am I in? It's getting like that, and all this time, there's pressures. It's coming up, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's starting to sink in then that we've just left. What we left was called as a triple fatal. We'd walked away, and as I'm 17 years in now, you don't walk away with the police. But that's what it felt like to me. It's a very strange feeling to have. But nevertheless, we were bused to headquarters, and all throughout that journey, we were recorded. Dave Stubbs, another Fed rep, he stood at the front, facing back into the bus with one of the body cams, and he recorded us. And probably, I wish I'd asked why. Didn't know about that. I know now. I'm relieved he did it. But very strange thing to be recorded. We record people, don't we, that have done something wrong usually. And flip it round, we're being recorded now, so have we done anything wrong? Obviously, it's all going to pan out, and we get to our headquarters in Stafford.
So, I think I already said that I joined the police in 1996. So at this stage, I've got 21 years of service, and police headquarters for me is a place that I feel very safe. I feel very secure. The gates are locked. There's a person on the gate stopping the unwashed coming in. All the people, can I say that?
Did.
All the people inside are all friendly, aren't they, of course? We're all police officers and police staff. And you know lots of people. You go there and you go for meetings, or you go for training, or you go for awards ceremonies, whatever the reason is. There's no issues with going to headquarters. It's fine. It's a very, very safe, very familiar place, which comforts me quite a lot whenever I'm at work and I come here. But on this particular day, bearing in mind it's now late Saturday evening, we turn up and we get through the gate and we go to what Rob calls the suite, one of the conference rooms, which is in the main building where the Costa Coffee Cafe is and the canteen. And it was shut. Now, not only was it shut, it was locked, and somebody had to find the code to get through the door to get in, which was completely alien to me and sent a shockwave right through me, thinking, this really is very serious. I already think I'm in trouble. Why am I coming to headquarters to a locked room? So we get in, and it was in complete darkness. It's a Saturday evening, and of course somebody had to find the lights, switch those on, and as they illuminate and brighten, you can see that there's nobody sitting having a meal or anything to drink. Costa Coffee's all shut down, the canteen's all shut down, Sky News isn't on the television on mute with the subtitles rolling. It's an empty, bare room, and that had a massive impact on me. It made me feel awful. It didn't give me any comfort at all. In fact, it did the opposite. It just sent my mind into turmoil, and you get this gut-wrenching feeling that, oh no, this really is serious. And at that point, looking back now, I realise that if I'd had the awareness training that Rob had, that would have been perfectly normal. I could have anticipated that. I didn't think I'm going to headquarters to see all these people and sit and have a drink. But I didn't think I'd get there and it'd be empty, dark, locked up, and completely alien to me from my past experiences. Nonetheless, that's where we ended up.
Earlier on we said there's 5 of us involved in this. And when we do the presentation, and you see it on the screen, it's entitled The Circus Arrives. And there wasn't clowns or jugglers or anything like that. There was so many people turning up. So you think there's 5 of us at the scene, but then you've got your control room staff who've we passed the call to, they've heard it all, they've had to make decisions, and everybody else on the outside. I don't know, control room managers, your FIMs, they were there as well. I've got it written down, I have to read it out, sorry. There was, there was ourselves, there was our 2 chief inspectors, an inspector, We had the TAC advisor, because he'd been on the air. We've got the control room staff. At the time it was called DO. Is he FIM now or?
Yeah, Force Incident Manager.
Yeah. Occupational health arrived. I'll go on about them. A little bit worrying when your professional standards department turns out, because you really must be in trouble now. They only come out to do one thing, haven't they? It's their job. Then your solicitor, actually your solicitor turns up. That happens, that changes a lot of things. We deal with people, don't we, in custody, the police. We have solicitors. You're subject. Am I a subject now? Am I in the wrong? Have I done something wrong? Don't know. And at that time, the IOPC turned up, IPCC now. Realising then, pretty much, this is quite important. How much trouble am I in? How long will I go to prison for? That was going through my head, honestly, going through at the time. As the room was set out in such a way that as you walked in, you know, the horseshoe of tables, we all sort of sat in our own little bit. And very strange to sit there with your mates and your colleagues, and you've worked with 10 plus years, can't speak. Very, very odd to do that, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got it. I think you might have watched, or you will be watching, the footage in our presentation, but there's something that we've included there called the divide, and it's a little bit to do with the people that I talked about knowing when you get to headquarters. So ordinarily you go to headquarters and you'll see Dave, who you've known since the day you joined. Hi Dave, how are you? I'm fine. And these little conversations take place and you catch up. As we sat around the table, however, feeling like the guilty, as people came into the suite, I knew them. We're a small force, Staffordshire is quite a small force, and I know most people. And I'm sitting thinking, should I speak? Shouldn't I speak? Can I say hello? Shouldn't I say hello? What do I say if I do speak? And of course we sit there feeling guilty while these people walk in and spot other people on the periphery who are not one of the 5 that feel very guilty, or the control room staff that are also feeling very guilty. Saying, hi Dave, how are you doing? How's your holiday? Oh, Peter, brilliant, thanks very much. Yeah, we took the dogs, we took the caravan, we swam in the sea, it was lovely. Oh, how are the kids? Yeah, the kids are fine. Hey Phil, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine, how are you? Yeah, good, thanks, got a new car. What is it? Oh, it's one of these, it's one of those. I'm sitting there thinking, no. There's 5 of us sat here contemplating our future in whichever cell block we go to, having been found guilty of death by dangerous driving or death by reckless, whatever it is. You're talking about your kids, your caravan, your car and your wife. I may never see mine again. Of course, now we know that's a load of nonsense, but they're the thoughts that we were having. And of course, we were having them in isolation, so I couldn't turn to Rob and say, what are you thinking? No. We weren't talking to each other, we were told not to. And the pressure began to build up and up and up, even more. And these conversations really didn't need to take place in that environment. And a little bit of policing on the door may have kept those conversations outside the suite for us not to engage in and not to witness, so that the pressure wasn't ramped up as much as it was by those silly, incidental little conversations that we couldn't get involved in. And that's why we talk about the divide.
Once settled in the room, as you could be, we were given the post-incident production. This was Pete Owen, Chief Inspector. What a lovely bloke. And there's nothing I haven't said to his face. I told him. And he went through, again, non-conferring notice. And he broke down what would be happening, who could be coming, who would be coming, and things like that. And you're still sitting there though, and you're still thinking, at one moment some boss is going to burst in this room and tear me a new one. I'm not swearing.
Amazing.
And it never happened. It was a really calm process, and you start, pressure will go away, all the stress, all the turmoil, all that horrible feeling, but it eases very slightly. And you start to understand when you've heard in all these words, all these phrases, the wrap around, above all, the protection. you start to understand what it is, and anybody who's aspiring to do that role, just bear in mind that you've got to be that person who doesn't get stressed, doesn't show it anyway, who's calm. It really, really helped, that did, to me. Then we went over where we had to do something, and I'm going to show it you now. You see it there? Tony will talk to you about that, because I can't say it.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
You can't say it. So, aliases. That always makes him laugh. Pseudonyms. It's very quickly understood by us that the protection isn't just physical, it isn't just emotional protection that we're being wrapped around and cocooned in and looked after by, but it's also protection from some of the idiots out there that probably weren't involved in this incident, but feel like they've got a part to play in it, shall we say. So to protect us, while all the intelligence checks are made around the driver of the vehicle, the driver and passengers of the vehicles that he collided with, because of course we didn't know who they were either, we're given a pseudonym. And I remember sitting there listening to the conversation around what pseudonym we're going to have, with the chief inspector and I think the appointed officer up the corner. What are we going to call them? What should we call them? Shall we call them Alphas? No, we've used Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. They can't be Charlies, because Charlies, no, they don't want to be Charlies, even though Tunstall is Charlie Division. No, we'll rule that out, we're not using Charlies. We'll go to the other end of the alphabet. What about Zulus? Well, that's to preserve the firearms officers. We don't want them to be Yankees, we don't want to Americanise them. What about whiskies? Oh no, there's a drink drive connotation there, let's go for some... And I'm sitting there thinking, just choose a letter. For God's sake, just choose a letter. I don't want to listen to that conversation. I don't want any more stress having to help you decide what letter to call me and my colleagues. You can have that conversation outside the post-incident suite. So please do. And for all your post-incident managers, appointed officers, fed reps, or aspiring any of the three, please just consider those little incidental conversations that maybe the staff, like us on that day, sitting there going through that turmoil, don't need to listen to. It didn't need to happen in that way. And in the end, I think we were golfs 1 through to about 18 or 19, I think, which is how many people this post-incident procedure scooped up. 5 of us at the scene, but many more people incorporated because of decision making and radio control and things like that. There you go.
It moved on. I mentioned earlier about your solicitor. We had the legal team from Slater and Gordon turn out. Again, very weird. Speak to solicitors, speak to them in custody. Bit weird when you've got to talk to them for yourself. And that's the word there, talk. This was my chance, our chance to speak. And as police, we love it, don't we? We've got to tell everybody everything. I went into separately, you go in, discuss with your fed rep, and it just wanted to go whoa, and all of it come out from, you know, exact detail, and they make that noise, yes, and they're clever people, and they just want a very, very brief account of what happened. But I mean, how long was it before we spoke to them? A few hours.
Yeah, it was a long time.
For them few hours, I'd sat there, bottling up everything. And it was just, I can't explain how good it felt just to speak to somebody. Then we gave our initial account, and I think you should be able to see that on the slides.
Yeah, hopefully. Your course tutor, whoever's running the course, we're doing this video for Dave, but I think you ought to be able to see a handwritten account, which is my initial account. And we included that for a couple of reasons, really. One is to demonstrate to you exactly what goes into an initial account. It's very brief in police statement terms. It was about 2/3 to 3/4 of an A4 sheet of paper. But also, I've done it to demonstrate. I'm quite precious about my handwriting. It's one of the it's my thing, I suppose, my handwriting. And if you're able to see that first account, you'll see that it's an abomination. The handwriting is awful, and there's a very, very good reason for that. And the reason is the pressure that we felt under whilst we're going through this process. Well, certainly I did at that point. Rob's quite right. It's very nice to get it off your chest and almost qualify the things that you've done, your decision making, and when somebody leans in and says, yes, that's right, I see, I understand, oh did you, I get it. You're kind of cementing your rationale for the things that you did, and that was okay. But when it came to handwriting that first account, I got the solicitor leaning in, watching every word. Dave Stubbs, he's actually quite well nourished, so he couldn't lean in, he was leaning back, but he was still watching what I was writing. He'll watch this, won't he?
Yeah, he knows.
The pressure was just being ramped up all the time, and that's the reason why we included that initial account. So when we came away from there, we were also able to have access to our occupational health manager at the time. And individually, confidentially, we were taken into a very small room where we could sit, just discuss our needs, fears, expectations, if any of you remember that phrase from your training. And we talked about various things and the way in which we felt right then at that moment in time. And I just wanted to share something with anybody who watches this, really. And it's to do with a speed camera, a Gatso camera, as we call them. And if any of you, I don't want to embarrass anybody, and you don't have to put your hands up or anything like that. If any of you have been through a speed camera and set the flash off, honesty and integrity. So if ever you've been through a speed camera and set the flash off, you will know that feeling that you get in the pit of your stomach, that churning, tumultuous feeling where you think, oh no, 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 what have I done? That was completely unnecessary. I don't need a ticket, I don't need the points, why have I just not paid attention to my driving? Why have I done that? The next day, those feelings, or that feeling, is slightly less. It's diluted over time. And then, of course, 4 days on, 10 days on, and ultimately 15 days on, dare I say, when that ticket hasn't dropped through the door, you've almost forgotten about it. The point being, no matter what happens, your mind is designed to cope over a period of time, and it chips away at all the bad feelings and all the bad issues until really you're able to cope with them. And that was something that occupational health offered to us. And we were able to apply that to the feelings we were having on the night. Fresh in our minds was the fact that at some point in the future, it's not a quick fix, but at some point in the future, you would begin to feel better about what had happened. Once some of the detail had been filled in and your mind had begun to dissolve the detail of what you'd done, because you may have committed it to paper at that point, you can begin not to forget about it, because you never will, but you begin to deal with it in a more rational way, because we were all actually in quite a bit of shock, really, based on what we'd seen.
Yeah.
Now, another thing I want to talk about is, and Rob's touched on it already, about how very calm and how very professional the approach was with the post-incident procedure from the manager, the appointed officer, solicitor, federation rep. All very calm. No raised voices, no pointing, no accusations at all. It was dealt with very, very well. But what I want to pass on to any aspiring supervisors or current supervisors is that during the process, when we came back to headquarters after the day, we'd had 48 hours rest, hadn't we?
Yeah.
We were called back to headquarters, apparently, to make our full account, our written account, what we call it, a statement, if you like. We were visited by a number of the executive team, a number of bosses from Staffordshire Police. And the one that sticks out in my mind, and having spoken to the other four, their minds as well, is a very brief encounter we had with the Chief Constable of Northamptonshire now, Nick Adderley, who was our ACC. He came and spoke to us, and he listened to what we'd got to say, and then he said, right, let me tell you now. The public, me and the executive, all expect you guys to go out there and do what you do. We know there's risk, and we try to manage it in the best way that we can with training and equipment, etc. And sometimes it goes wrong, and that's what's happened to you. It's gone wrong. But as long as we're confident that you've done it the way that you should, with good intention, me and the rest of the executive team stand shoulder to shoulder with you guys every day out there. Now that, and it's doing it now, it had a profound effect on us, and it really gave us that reassurance that, yeah, actually, we were doing our job, we were doing it properly, and we have the full support of Staffordshire Police. And I want to mirror that, or, well, I want to compare that to on the night after this very long 11 hours. We did actually get back to the police station at around about 3 o'clock to go home on time, funnily enough. And before we set off from headquarters here, I was asked as the senior one on the shift, will you just find your sergeant and tell them that you're not going to be at work tonight and you're not going to be at work tomorrow night, because you're now having 48 hours of rest before you come back to make your statements. So we set off from headquarters, get back to Burslem, and in amongst all the people that were waiting for us to talk and ask questions was my sergeant, who had been in custody for our parade that didn't see us that day. And out of courtesy I went and found him. I said, Sergeant, I just need to tell you something. Pete Owens asked me to come and find you. The post-incident manager asked me to come and find you. Me, Rob and the other three, we won't be in tonight or tomorrow night. You fucking what? Was the response I got from him, and I do apologise for swearing, but I need to tell it as it is. And that, after a full day of being treated with great professionalism and patience from somebody I know better than any of those people that I'd dealt with in the day, was a hammer blow. It really was. And the point we make is, for all you aspiring sergeants, inspectors, whatever rank, if you are in a supervisory role, please be mindful that the people that you brief in the day, or that you saw yesterday, that you send out there to do a job, they might not be the same when they come back in at the end of the shift. And that's exactly what happened to us. And I need to make that point, because please, you don't have to actually touch your staff, but get away from me. You don't have to actually touch your staff, but sometimes they just need a hug. And by that I mean, a hand on the shoulder or a quiet word. They don't need a response like the one that I got off my sergeant.
No way.
It just doesn't work. It has a very detrimental effect as it happened. But there you go.
We had the 48 hours off of rest. I can't remember resting during any of that. And throughout that, you're thinking and what you did, what you said. You can't switch off from it. It's impossible. And you may have heard a phrase, big boys don't cry. Utter rubbish. I normally use another word, but I'm trying not to swear. You will. I did. I know the others did. Mine was guilt, because I blame myself for it. I can see now, I didn't do it. He didn't stop. He drove, he crashed, things like that. And going forward from that, the support that stayed with us through occupational health meant, well, none of us were off, were we?
No time off.
No time off. Just from things being done right. But upon our return, we were back to our headquarters to do our statement. We were taken to Silver Control. We got access to a computer. But one thing you've got to remember, when you do this, you get your other name, one I can't say.
Pseudonym.
That's him. Always use that, and always use your colleagues. And don't sign it as your name, because it throws everything out the water. Well, that's part of the training. And when we get there, we're met by a solicitor. He's there to help. But there was a lot of things we were given. We were given copies of the NDM. Give it a spin. We were given footage, our body cam footage, and the footage from the council cameras around Stoke. We were given a copy of the Code of Ethics, the Chief Inspector's fact sheet. That's what he knew, what had happened on that night. We were given a copy of the serial. And that's quite important then, because you can read through everything. And one of our chief supers, he compiled something. It's more for the firearms world, but it's really good. how to make a professional witness statement. And I'm sure I'm talking to experienced police, and you all know how to make a statement. Thought I did till I read this. It's all about selling yourself. What you've done, what you're qualified in. And don't be afraid to put feelings in and things like that. But it saved us. We were never asked questions by anybody. We were given our pursuit policy, copy of the Road Traffic Act. What powers have we got to stop vehicles? And the two things that meant a lot, we were given the time to do it and no pressure from anybody, no one. We roll up, you pointed officers there, and he's there just to make sure that it all runs well and things like that. I sat down, headphones on, press play on my footage, and as soon as I heard it, I turned it off and left the room. I'm not going to put my hand up, can I leave the room, sir? I didn't do that, I just walked out. Got out, composed myself and thought, probably shouldn't have done that. Probably should have said, I've got to leave the room, something like that, but I didn't. And I come back in. His first words to me were, are you all right? I said, yeah, sorry about that, I said, no. So I'll make a note when you go in and out of the room. And that to me, just said it all from how the post-incident works. It's there to look after you. And you got to remember, if you're in a post-incident, you're a key police witness. If at any point during that changes, you're covered by more rights. You go into custody, you got PACE. But always remember that key police witness. And everyone's there, well, they were for me, Antonio, and everybody else to help us. I can't say any more than if you are unfortunate to go through it, go with it. I mean, we've called it, haven't we, a bit Janet and John.
Yeah.
Someone tells you something, you do it. They're not trying to trip you up or anything. It's all there to protect you and help you through it. That's it. We set about doing our statements then. 12, 13, 14 pages of size 12 font, was it? And more, the detail that you will go into to do that. We were from there. One thing we didn't mention earlier was how we didn't know how this would be dealt with, did we? Was it going to be in-house dealing with, or it go out? And it did go out to the IOPC. Which I would say, you hear different stories, horror stories about them. Go and speak to these people if you get the chance. We never had any issues, did we?
No. You raise a very good point, actually, because that period of rest of 48 hours and then subsequently the rest of the week making statements, we were getting drip fed some updates about condition of casualties. One in particular was in such a bad state that the family were called to the bedside on 2 occasions. And we were being told this, and it's not very pleasant.
No.
I don't need to elaborate, I don't think. But amongst all the things that caused a lot of the pressure was the thought that the IOPC, as they are now, had said, we've got a decision to make and there are 3 outcomes. We either allow Staffordshire Police to investigate this in its entirety, we allow Staffordshire Police to investigate guided by us, the IOPC, or we take it on ourselves, lock, stock and barrel, and Staffordshire Police play no part in it. Now, of course, if Staffordshire Police are investigated, we know most of the people in Staffordshire Police, and more importantly, they know us. They know that there's no malice, we're quite professional, we do as we're told, we do it properly, we've had the training, and we were quite confident that if Staffordshire Police investigated us in these circumstances, wouldn't have a lot to worry about really. But of course, the thought that maybe it goes out to another organisation, I've no idea who Rob Goodwin is, or Tony Collier, or any of the others involved, it just filled us with dread completely, and it ramped up that pressure even more.
Does, doesn't it? It was...
Yeah, and eventually we got the nod while we were off for those 48 hours that yes, they're taking it lock, stock and barrel. That was a defining moment, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We were then told that their investigations will be complete in about 3 months, and they weren't. And there's a few reasons why they weren't. One of them being, on the serial that we're now sitting reading whilst we're making our statements to headquarters, is a phone call from a member of the public saying, I've just seen your officers at Sneyd Green conduct an illegal TPAC manoeuvre. Well,
really?
TPAC hasn't been trained or used in Staffordshire since just around the time that I joined Staffordshire Police in '96. So none of us really knew how to do TPAC, so we didn't do it. We weren't trained in it anyway, so we'd never have done it. And when the IOPC investigator went to get a statement off that person who rang up, first of all, he was very difficult to get hold of. And when he finally got hold of him, he said, right, I'd like to sit down, talk to you about the phone call you made to the police on that night. What did you see? Oh, I didn't see anything. But you rang the police and said that their officers had just done an illegal TPAC manoeuvre. Oh, I was in the pub, me. I heard somebody talking about it and I read about it in the paper, so I'll give you a ring. We'd also might like to meet that person, wouldn't we, and shake him by the throat, in whichever form we could.
Yes, bless
So
him.
that made a bit of a difference to the length of the inquiry, and it took 11 months in the end to get the report through from the IOPC to say that no charges, no discipline, not even any advice
Nothing was there.
for any of us. We were never interviewed by them. We were never asked for clarification in further statements. We were never asked to put anything right in any of the statements that we made, because the post-incident procedure worked so well and our statements were spot on. You've got to go with it, like Rob said, and you need to be the type of person, if you're going to be involved in it, that understands it. So you guys, there's a reason for an exam. It's to test your understanding, because if you understand it, the type of thing that's going to happen in it and what happens to the people that you're looking after, you'll be able to cater for them and look after them, and I'm sure that that's what you all want. That's pretty much it really, apart from to mention two things. We're nearly done. The first one is, we employed at the time a system named Spirit, and it was in-car telemetry. Now, as you're all aware, because it's a technical device that sits inside all the police vehicles, it's classed as forensic evidence, and when it was recovered from our vehicles, it showed us doing over 100 miles an hour, and it showed us overtaking and undertaking on a regular basis during the pursuit. Which of course you now know isn't true because you've seen the body-worn camera footage. Imagine if we didn't have the body-worn cameras on. There's your forensic evidence. This is what the officers did, and they say they didn't. Where does the judgment fall? Well, you've got to go with the forensic evidence. The officers are obviously lying to say that they weren't overtaking and they weren't doing 100 miles an hour because they don't want to be seen like dangerous drivers. Well, fortunately, the body-worn cameras were running and we could disprove what the Spirit system said. And at that moment, Nick Adley, and I've mentioned him once already, sent out a memo and said, take all the Spirit devices out of all the police vehicles right now. And furthermore, he asked the Federation if Staffordshire Police had ever prosecuted or disciplined any police driver based purely on Spirit data. We hadn't, luckily, but his rationale was, if we have, then we're going to have to review the decision. So the last thing then is, and Rob's touched on it, I think we both have, attention to detail. Very, very important. When you get your staff, if you're running a post-incident procedure, to write their statements, no pressure. Don't put them under any pressure, because they've got to be the best statements that they've ever written. Rammed with detail, accurate detail, no gaps, and nothing highlights this more really around attention to detail than a text message conversation which happened between one of the five of us, one of the other four, who we'll call PK, because they were his initials, and the Federation rep Dave Stubbs. Because during those 48 hours of rest, he contacted Stubbsy by text and said, Stubbsy, I'm in a dark place, I don't feel great, I feel very guilty, I feel very vulnerable. I'm very anxious about what's going to happen. I can't say it was my fault, but I can't say it wasn't. I'm really, really worried. I'm in a really bad position. I need your help. Can you ring me? And for whatever reason, Stubbsy couldn't ring him because he was in a meeting or whatever. So under the table, I guess, he typed out a message in response, which started with, PK, don't think that. Which of course is a very good start. Stop him having those negative thoughts from the outset. And then reassure him some way. And the second sentence, as it should have been, read, you're in a good position. Which of course we were. We got Federation advice, occupational health were looking after us. Solicitors were involved. They were giving us the advice. And collectively, we were in a very good position. However, Stubbsy missed out a full stop in the middle of those two sentences. So it actually read, PK, don't think that you're in a very good position. Unbelievable. So I think Stubbsy realised very quickly what he'd done. He rang PK and said, PK, come out the loft, put the rope back in the garage and make yourself a brew. And I make light of it. But please, and that's a true story, it genuinely demonstrates the need for detail. And pretty much, guys, that's the end of the presentation that we wrote to deliver awareness around post-incident procedures. I do apologise for the COVID haircut. Rob apologises for not swearing because he's normally very entertaining and quite blue. But there you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No bollocks.